Hi there, how are you doing? I'm going to talk about trauma today. Why? You're going to discover that in the next few minutes. Think about this. Trauma isn't just what happened to you, it's also what happened inside you as a result. If you're wondering where the source of that quote was or is, hang on, I'll come to it in a little bit. But that quote shifts the way we think about trauma because so often people confuse trauma with the event itself. Thing is, though, what really matters is the impact it leaves inside of us, in our body, our emotions, and our sense of safety. Right now, if you look around, the word trauma is everywhere. And while it's good that we're talking about it, there's also some confusion. Many people that I come across are self-diagnosing, and they're doing that quite often because of what they see online. And a lot of that stuff can be both misleading and at times absolutely unhelpful. So let's start here. What do we mean by trauma? Trauma isn't simply an accident, an assault, or a war zone. Yes, those can be sources of trauma, but trauma is defined by the wound it leaves, how the nervous system reacts, how emotions become trapped, and how safety is disrupted. There's what we might call big T trauma, life-threatening events, abuse, natural disasters. And there's also smaller T trauma or small T trauma. Experiences that on the surface may not look dramatic, but they quietly shape us. Things like neglect, constant criticism, feeling unseen or unheard, or living in a household where you were always, or where you are always on edge. And here's a key point. Two people can go through exactly the same event, and one may carry deep trauma while the other doesn't. Because trauma is not the event itself, it's the imprint it leaves behind. So as I said a minute or two ago, I've seen and heard a rise in self-diagnosis, with trauma being spoken about all over the place, especially on social media. There has been this rise in self-diagnosis. I've seen posts and videos that say things like, if you don't like loud noises, you have trauma. If you struggle to focus, that's trauma. If you overthink, it's trauma. Those things are signs that someone may have experienced trauma, possibly. But there are also common human experiences that can come from things like stress, personality traits, or how our brains are wired. Let's think of some other examples. People labeling every painful breakup as trauma, calling workplace stress or burnout trauma, referring to themselves as trauma survivors without any professional assessment, often based on online checklists, Google, ChatGPT. The danger is this: when everything becomes trauma, the word loses its meaning and people may end up carrying a label that doesn't actually help them to heal. So why can self-diagnosis be harmful? But let's be clear, self-reflection is valuable. Noticing patterns in yourself is very valuable. Self-diagnosis, though, that can be misleading in a couple of ways. It can stop people from seeking proper help. If you've already decided I have trauma based on a TikTok list, you might not reach out for a deeper conversation with a therapist, a coach, a counselor, a doctor. And second, it can invalidate others' experiences. So if everyone is calling every stress trauma, then those living with complex PTSD or deeply rooted trauma might feel silenced or minimized. Think about those folks. And equally, the reverse is true. If someone's trauma doesn't look dramatic, people may dismiss it as just stress, and both are unhelpful. So let's try and find a healthier reframe. What is a healthier way forward? Instead of rushing to label everything as trauma, try asking yourself, what is my body telling me right now? What emotions keep resurfacing or surfacing? What behaviors am I repeating that feel protective, but at the same time they keep me stuck? Those are some of the questions that open the door to real understanding. Trauma doesn't heal through a label. It heals through attention, compassion, and very often safe professional support. So if you see yourself in some of those patterns, whether or not you call it trauma, that's already important. You don't need the perfect label to start caring for yourself. So let's come back to that quote. It came from Dr. Gabor Mate. Look him up on YouTube, he's amazing. He said, trauma isn't just what happened to you, it's also what happened inside you as a result. And the invitation is simple. Instead of rushing to call everything trauma, slow down and listen to what your body and your emotions are really saying. If it feels overwhelming, reach out for support, because naming everything as trauma does not bring healing. Listening with the right support, however, that does.